Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to be speaking with Irvine Lewis, who experienced a life-changing illness at age 46. Over the past decade, he has regained his health, independence, and love for life, but not without challenges. Irvin is married with 4 children and is a man who knows the worth of giving selfless and the importance of valuing others, no matter who they might be. Irvin's motto is, life is a gift and a great opportunity to express love, care, and goodwill. Irvin, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you, Donald.
Thank you very much for agreeing to do this. And I can't believe how very, very quickly time has gone since we agreed to do this. So welcome, welcome to this. We're going to go through some questions, as I normally do, and we're going to sort of talk about your life journey, all being well. Is that okay, sir?
That's fine with me. That is fine.
Great. So the first questions I normally ask people in these kind of interviews, like, give me a bit background as to where you were born, etc.
Right. You want to go ahead or?
Yeah. Go
well,
ahead.
I'm born and bred in Warsaw.
Warsaw.
Yes, I'm a
Wow.
Warsaw man. I'm still actually live in Warsaw.
Okay.
But I'm born and bred in Warsaw, in North Warsaw.
North Warsaw. Well, I guess for those who don't know where Warsaw is, it's not too far from Birmingham, the second city, is it? Warsaw.
No, not too far.
Yeah.
There's a few pockets of settlement from the Caribbean, when the various communities came over, and
Okay.
North Warsaw was one. In the Warsaw borough, where I grew up, North Warsaw was one area. There's another area called Karma, and where was the other area? North Warsaw, Karma, and Plek. Those were like 3 big areas where the Afro-Caribbean community sort of settled.
All right. Okay. And you talk about people settling. So I guess your parents came from elsewhere?
Yes, my parents are originally from Jamaica, St. Catherine.
Okay. And is that somewhere you've been?
Yes, I've been there a couple of times.
Okay.
I went there back in the 80s, when my grandmother died, and met some of my cousins, my uncles,
Right.
and family. And then I went back a few years ago, after many years, and met upon some more of my cousins, and went back to the old family home where my older brothers and sisters grew up.
Okay. Oh, so you've got brothers and sisters?
I have, yes. There were 13 of us. There's 12
Ah!
now.
Sorry
There
to
were
say, so surprised. Did you say that? 1,
13.
3? Oh my
Yes,
God.
13. And I was the
Wow.
middle child.
You were a middle child?
Yes. So I've got 4 sisters older, 4 sisters younger, 2 brothers older, and 2 brothers younger. So I was right in the middle.
Oh my God.
Right in the middle.
That's amazing. Wow. So that must have been quite a household then, with so many
It was.
children.
It certainly was. We had lots of fun as children, but then my dad was a very heavy disciplinarian. So,
Or was he?
oh yes. So if you can imagine a house full of children, and he worked nights, and so he needed his rest, but you've got all these noisy children in the daytime, and he wants his sleep, and it'd be saying, "Listen, you're making too much noise," but I'm doing it in a polite way. It wasn't so polite with my dad back then, and it
I
was a
get that.
case of we'd be wreaking havoc everywhere, and as soon as we saw my dad, we just scattered, disappeared.
I can
But it
imagine mommy then having to deal with all of this. Because I mean, if he's working all night and then kind of sleeping off to it, mommy must have had quite a torrid time sort of
My
dealing with
mom, I
everybody.
don't know how she did it. She was very, very calm, and she managed us all very well. And
Oh
she
my
knew
God.
just how to handle us. But my mom was someone with the one-liner. She would say something, and that would have you gripped, and that was it. She
Really?
controlled. Yeah, she was very, very good that way. You didn't want we didn't want mom to say too much because whatever she said all normally comes to pass. So, we just made sure that whatever she said, we did. So she had a way of controlling us.
Wow, it's amazing. And when you think back, when I think back, the mother is always the matriarch in these
Yeah.
family household, and they run it like a military, almost a military
Oh
sort of,
gosh. Oh,
you know.
absolutely. I mean, even when my mom passed, and it was my dad for so many years, um, myself and my siblings and our children were saying, "Oh, we're going to grandma's house." I'm thinking, well, grandma's not alive anymore, but we always called it grandma's house.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she
That's
was.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's so prevalent and pop. Well, is it popular? I think it was normal culture, but
yeah.
where the mother was always the center of the home.
And I'm not sure how much credit these mothers were given for that,
Mm,
because it's something they kind of born into, grown into, married into, and it's not
yeah,
like they had training for it or anything.
no.
But do we, as a culture, give them the credit that they were due? Because it's a mighty task.
It is, and as I'm thinking on it, um, they say it takes a village to grow a child,
Mm.
and to a certain extent, my home, my mom looked after everybody's children, not just us, and there was a lot of us,
Yeah,
and children from the street as well as from our community, they came to our house, and we have memories of different families growing up with us.
I totally understand that, because I was the same.
Yeah,
So my mother was a mother for us as her children, but mothers for loads of other children. So I fully get what you were saying, and loads of other mothers did the same thing.
yeah. And so I think that is one culture that we probably didn't lose, that we've managed to keep, because my grandmother in Jamaica, she was the same.
All
She
right, right.
she grew up a lot of other children,
Yes, yeah, yeah,
and back then you had sometimes where children were left because their parents had gone to Canada, America, or the UK,
yeah.
and had left the children behind, and my gran would look after so many of them.
I understand that very well. Believe me.
Mm.
So talking about Jamaica, then, so how much do you embrace your culture?
I embrace it a lot more now than I did before. Um,
Okay,
and I said that because at one point, what I saw, let's just say I saw it through European eyes.
okay, yeah,
Um, and the things that and the media is very powerful. The images
very,
and
very.
the images and the subliminal messages that they put out about people from the Caribbean.
Mm.
Um, as a young black person growing up in the UK, um, you knew you were different because you were made to feel different by the indigenous people at the time. So you felt different, you knew you were different, and you didn't know where you belonged. And then
Mm.
what you saw on the TV, it I remember being very angry actually when I actually went to Jamaica and saw it for myself.
Really?
Yes, I was, because the images that they portrayed on the TV and the media here, they were impoverished, and they were poor
Mm.
and needy and really,
And
really, really
very
bad,
third world.
very third world. And when we left the UK to go, we bought a lot of our old clothes and shoes and things like that to think, well, we're going to help our family when we go to Jamaica. When we got there, our old clothes were old clothes, and it's like they were more fashionable than we, and they didn't live anything like what the media portrayed. And
Right.
I remember leaving the airport in an open top car and listening to all the sound systems as we journeyed to the village,
Wow.
to Banbury. And I thought to myself, this is paradise. This is absolutely beautiful. I could not get over how beautiful it was. And it to me it was like paradise. And I'm thinking the images that that was painted in the UK, I was quite angry because it was
Yes.
nothing. It didn't reflect anything of the true culture of Jamaica. Don't get me wrong, there is poverty there, but it's not all like that.
No,
It
no.
wasn't all like that. So I
Yeah.
was quite angry, not at Jamaicans, but at the system here
Yes.
for
Yes. Yes.
for misleading me as a young black person growing up
Yeah.
of the people and the islands that my parents came from.
And that's one of the failings, isn't it, of um, schooling, teaching, or not
Yes,
teaching, in the sense that you will get elements of certain ethnicity taught history wise in the
yes,
class, but other ethnicity is just null and void. It just doesn't exist.
mm,
So it's only what the media portrays, and it's very powerful, but it's normally negativity that sells,
yes,
you
yes, it
know.
is. Yes.
And you can imagine, because it's a very, very good point that you just made. But can you
Mm,
imagine if you think that as a Caribbean or African descent person, what
mm,
others of your sort of non-African people think, because they never see the difference. But
no.
you did. You see what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
So a lot of people will go away forever believing what they see on TV, you know.
Mm.
So it's a very, very good point you just made there. So talking about schooling then, where did you go to school?
I went to North Walsall Infants and North Walsall Juniors, and then I went to a comprehensive school called Allenwell in my teenage years.
Okay,
And I'd have to say, when I was at school, Allenwell School, you have academies now and schools that
okay,
specialize in certain either business or sports. It wasn't strictly like that when I was at school, but my school was known for its excellence in sports
okay.
at the time. We had people like Tessa Sanderson who used to train there.
You used to train at your school. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, and then there's a bodybuilder, a UK bodybuilder called Bob Spallick,
okay,
and he used to be a teacher at our school, and he was
right,
like he was like a British bodybuilder,
right, right,
part
yeah,
of the Olympic team,
right, right.
and in terms of sports, football, athletics in particular, and rugby, we were sort of like one of the top schools,
All right, and
especially for athletics at the time.
okay. So did you participate in any of these
I
sports?
did. I wasn't one of the top athletes, but I was a middle distance runner. I
All
was
right,
800 meter. I was an 800-meter runner, and I was
okay,
okay. I wasn't the best, but I was
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I often talk about, to me, they were my heroes, which were the guys in the years above me.
Yes,
And they were very, very good sprinters. And at the time, there wasn't many people who could touch them. And
okay.
I remember a good moment for me was as a school we went to Cannock then had a stadium,
Right.
and we went there, and I'll never forget the guys above me were discussing how because they were doing the relay, and they were discussing how they were going to do the relay, and they said, or was it the 200, 200 meters? And what they said, what we're going to do, we're going to sprint, leave everybody behind, and then in the last 50 meters, we're going to turn around and run backwards on the finishing line. That's how confident they were.
Really?
Yeah, and that's exactly what they did.
Oh my God.
So we're watching. To me, my heroes. They
Yeah.
they sprinted round the back straight, and everybody was left miles behind. And as they came into the 100-meter straight, two sprinters, they just turned backwards and run backwards to the finishing line. Nobody else was in sight.
I know. Can you imagine videoing that and showing that?
Yeah, yeah. And that was my memories. And
Oh my God.
as a school, we were like one of the tops in athletics.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So what was school like for you overall then?
School, it was mixed. I think it was a journey of trying to discover who I was. My early years of schooling, I knew I was different because wherein all the kids, there was a few Asian, well, there wasn't many Asians. There's a couple of Asian guys, me and a couple of black guys, and the majority white. And I knew I was different because back then, as children, this is now in my infants and junior years, all the as it were, the popular girls would go out with all the popular boys, and I
Uh,
wasn't popular.
okay.
So I didn't get a look in, but I knew it was because of my color.
Okay. Okay.
I knew it was because of my color. So I knew I was different and I was seen as different, even though I got on well with everyone.
Yes. Yes.
And I remember my teachers, some teachers just did not like people like me. And I
And
knew,
how would they show that then? How would you say
oh
that you?
gosh, the one teacher, I had a lot of white friends and we got on very, very well. And during lunch times and break times, we would have comics and we'd read the Beano, the Dandy, and all those kind of comics. And we'd having our own little laughs and jokes amongst ourselves. And then the teacher would say, "All right, time to put the comics away. We're going to start class now." And as you do as children, you would just continue talking and chatting
Mm,
and having laughs, as it were. And I remember this one particular day, not that I was talking, but my friends were still talking. And the
mm,
teacher said, "Put your comics away. It's time to stop talking now." And I'm just sat there listening to my friends carrying on and laughing and joking. The next minute, I just felt a slap right across my face. The teacher came and he slapped me right across the face and told me, "I told you to stop talking." And I looked and I thought, I wasn't actually talking. It was my friends, but he
okay.
took it out on me.
Right.
And I
Right.
knew it was because of the color of my skin.
Mm,
And
mm,
that
mm,
particular teacher, I knew he didn't like me. So, you
mm.
tend to just keep out of his way.
Yeah. 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 So, what about academically? Did you find that sort of very challenging because of any reason, or it was fine?
It In junior school, it was fine. I missed out on the last 6 months of school because we moved house.
Mm.
And when we moved house, um, I didn't have a school to go to.
For six
So
months.
for about, I think it was about somewhere between 3 to 6 months, I didn't have a
Wow.
school to go to. And I said bye to my friends. And then I think it was 3 or 4 months later, I think it was about 3 months actually, 3 or 4 months, but it was my last year in junior school. So, you do your 11 plus. So I wasn't really prepared for it. But I did it and I got through because when I went, I think it has a bearing on when you go to your senior school, what classes that you're in.
Yeah.
And when I went to my senior school, I was in the middle classes where my sister, she was in the top class.
Right.
And
That's right.
because the two of us, we didn't have a school to go to, but where the area that we moved to, they took her into that school and she was able to complete, to do that year and then a final year. Where for me, I missed out and
Mm,
went back to
mm.
my old school and whatever preparations that I had, it was very late, but
Yeah.
it still got me through. I was in middle class in senior school.
Yeah. 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 So did you have anything in mind while you're at school as to what you want to do? Was there something,
Um,
a
I was
longing?
I was naturally good at art.
Okay.
I was a very good drawer and painter, and but I had no direction on what I wanted to do. And my scenario was like this. My parents came to parents' evening when I was in what they would class as year 7 now, and the teacher he said, "Oh, I don't think Irvin's got the capability. I think he will struggle. I don't think he can hack or manage this." And I was listening to the teacher talk to me, telling my parents this.
Was
I
he
was so
referring to you being an artist or what?
no, in general,
Okay.
in general, and I was so angry. I thought. he doesn't know anything about me, and he's telling my parents this. So I made up in my mind. I said, okay, I'm going to show him. So I said, I'm going to be top at this class, and that's exactly what I did.
Wow.
I became top of the class. I had the highest marks, and that was in history. And then I thought, oh, my next subject will be geography, and then I was top at geography. But I had no direction. I just chose a subject that I wanted to be top at, and then I'd become top at it. And then I've done that, I've proven that, and then move on to something else. Uh,
That's quite interesting because that might have deterred some other children, who will sit and listen to that rather than yourself who said, right, okay, I'm going to show you. Some kids might just go the opposite way, hearing that sort
some
of thing.
some did, some
Okay.
did, because when someone who you look up to educate you talks to you like that, you tend to think that there's a problem with you,
Yes. And
and
there's no
it's not.
way ahead because
Yeah,
you were the problem. Wow.
yeah. And in my school, I look back at it now, and it's not just my school, but I think schools in general, the
Mm,
educational system is preparing, and especially kids from the 60s and the 70s, they're
mm,
preparing you to become the white collar workers, the plumbers, the electricians, the carpenters, the engineers.
mm.
Um, they don't actually prepare you for any, to be an entrepreneur or to
Right.
think big.
Yeah.
And in the class that I was in, the people from my kind of class was expected to become carpenters and probably plumbers and things like that, where the
Yes.
guys from the top classes were looked to become the lawyers, the solicitors, and things like
All
that.
right, right. And you felt that, it was
Um,
pretty obvious.
you didn't even realize you were conditioned that way. We didn't even have computers. Computers was only introduced in sixth form when I was leaving,
Mm,
when I was at school, and you were conditioned that way because years later, when I left school, I actually got into electronics and computers, and I met some of my friends some 20, 30 years later, and they were shocked that I was actually a computer engineer and an electronic engineer, for the fact that they became what the system expected them to become, a bricklayer, a
yeah.
carpenter, but I actually broke that mold. And it was
So,
interesting.
yeah. So how did you break that mold? I mean, at what point did you? Were you always interested in that, or was it a point when you say, "Look, I want to do this"?
Well, I think it was just a natural thing because, as you remember, back in the day, you used to have the TV engineer that used to come and fix the TVs.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
Well, there was that many of us. Our TV was always broke. Uh, it was always broke, and I used to watch the TV engineer fix the TV, and he would always say, "Oh, the picture valve's gone. I'll sort it." And I'd watch him take the back off the TV and look at the problem and fix it, and then all of a sudden the picture would come on. And I remember a TV broke one day and it went off, and I was about probably 10,
Okay.
10, no, 10 or somewhere between 10 and 11. And I went, I know what the problem is. The picture valve's gone.
Oh,
So
really?
so I took the back off and I did what the engineer did, what I watched him do. And I looked at all the valves in the TV and I saw that all the valves were on except for one valve. And I looked at it and I thought, this one's not working. It had a metal cap on top. And I pushed the cap down and it glowed. And then the TV came on. I says, that's the picture valve. So I got some super glue and I made sure that the wire was sticking out the top of the cap. Used the super glue to glue the cap back on to the glass because it was a glass valve then.
Yeah.
And it fixed the TV.
Wow.
And I fixed the TV. So, I mean, I was kind of showing signs that way. And I used to
Yeah.
like making things. And I
Okay.
always, when my mom's sewing machine broke, I'd fix it. When the irons broke, I'd fix it. And this is like between the ages of, I'd say between 12 and 14. So I was always fixing things and making things. I made my own
So it
football
came
table.
naturally to you. It came naturally to you to
Yeah,
do that sort of practical things.
yeah. So
Wow.
I was showing signs that way. And also, musically, there was a friend from school and a friend from church who I used to learn things from musically. I showed signs there as well.
Okay.
And so I kind of had, when it comes to electronics and fixing things and having a logical mind, it
Yeah.
was already there. So when I left and went to college, in fact, let me backtrack a little bit. Um, I was awarded the Best Artist Award when I was at school because I was very good at drawing and painting,
Oh,
and
really?
they all thought I was going to university to become an artist. And I hadn't got a clue what I wanted to do. I was good at it. All my mom said to me, go to college and do what your brother did. And my brother was an electrician,
Okay.
and I didn't even know what that was. And when I was given the prize money to go and buy some books on art, I went and bought two books on one electronics and one on electrical engineering. And when I went back to school, they said, we can't present you with those books. So I had to get this nice big art book from the library. And I'll never forget it. I think it was Shirley Williams, who was a local MP at the time.
Right, right.
And she came to our school and presented me with this book on art.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
And
fantastic.
I'm sure my teachers were disappointed that I went to college and did electronics.
But you
And
weren't
no,
disappointed though, were you?
no, it was just it was something that was in me. In fact, when I finished college with my certificate in electronics, I didn't even know what job I was going to do with it. I didn't know what you could do with it. All I was thinking, well,
Right.
it's not the same as my brother because I was supposed to go and do what my brother did, and
Yeah.
he was electrical engineer,
Yeah, yeah,
and I was electronics, and I'm thinking, oh, they're the same, or what's the difference? I didn't have a
yeah.
clue.
Yes, 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 yeah. It was more like he was doing like installation and that sort of thing, was
Yeah,
he? Yeah, what you were doing the electronic side of it.
I was thinking, well, I could fix irons, which is all I could think of what I used to do at home. I didn't know what I could use it for.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And
Yeah.
and then the other thing, while I was at college, I was always, do you remember the shop Tandies?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I was always in there messing with the computers because I like computers as well. And that's where my interest in computers started,
Okay.
going there. And then I'd have to say at college, um, I kind of focused, even though I was learning electronics,
Yeah,
you get your grant money to buy your books and things like that.
yeah.
I used mine to buy a computer and teach myself how to program. And then I used it also to loan a saxophone from the music shop.
Oh my God.
And so, those are my three things:
So,
computers, electronics, and music.
wow. So you said you taught yourself to do programming.
Yes, I did.
That that, that's not always something that someone just naturally pick up on. So did you find that quite easy, programming?
Um, I found it quite challenging. Anything that I found that had a rhyme or reason to, I was very logically minded. So for me, it was a challenge. And I'd never forget back then, I could afford a computer, but I couldn't afford a hard disk or anything like that to save the program. So I'd spend like 3 hours writing a program and
Wow.
just watch the program like a man run across the screen, and then I'd have to switch the computer off and lose the program.
Uh, and then you mentioned a saxophone.
Yes,
So why a saxophone?
because I was always into music, and the guy who inspired me, because I started off really as a keyboard player
Oh yeah.
and playing guitar, and a friend of mine who used to play the keyboards, who I used to watch, to me, he was brave because at school you didn't do music because it was labeled,
Oh,
and I didn't want to be labeled, so I avoided doing music. However, when I had music lessons, what I'd learnt at church, I'd play at school, and all of a sudden the attention was taken from the teacher to me, and all my friends, look what Lewis can do, blah blah blah, blah sort of thing. And the teachers would get frustrated with me because they could see that I was capable, but I didn't want to do it because of the label. And
so
my
can you
friend,
explain? Can you explain? for the purpose of the listeners, what do you mean by being labeled? You know, with,
Um, you were labeled as being a strange person
really?
if you were into music.
So it's kind of a bad thing rather than a
Yeah,
good thing.
it was a bad thing, you
Wow.
know, it was a bad thing. So I avoided not being labeled as a strange person
Yeah.
by not
Yeah.
taking it. And my friend, I respected him for it because he inspired me on the keyboards, and then he took up the saxophone at school
Oh, okay.
and he did music, and he wasn't afraid of the label,
Mm,
you know, and
yeah.
I admired him for that because I think I sh naturally should have actually taken it up, but I didn't. And inspired me to play the saxophone
Right.
because at that time,
Which you do very well because I've heard you.
yeah, he inspired me. But back then, if you can imagine, a young black boy, you can't afford to buy a saxophone
No, no.
because they're too expensive. And um, he was a white boy, and they didn't seem to have those issues. You know, if you needed, he had a big organ at home, which I used to go and play on.
Okay.
Um, and then when he decided to play the saxophone, he got a saxophone.
Wow.
Like in my family with how many siblings, you
Yeah.
know, there's no way I was going to get a saxophone, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So when I
yeah.
got to college, I used my grant money and I couldn't afford to buy it. I hired the saxophone.
You hired it.
Yeah, because
So what sort of cost did that was that then per month or per
I'm
what?
sure it was something like about £150 to hire it for 6 months.
Really?
Yeah, and I hired it for 6 months. And when the 6 months was about to come to an end, my grant money came through again, so I hired it for another 6 months.
So how much was a saxophone back in them days?
I'm sure it was about somewhere between, I think it was about £400 or £500,
Wow.
£400 or £500. But can you imagine back in the
Yeah.
70s? So 70s,
Yeah.
um, late 70s,
Yeah. Yeah.
early 80s,
Yeah. Yeah.
early 80s. £400 was a lot of
A
money.
lot of money. Lot of money. Wow.
And I hired it, and then after I hired it for a year. It was a case of I've got to hand it back now, and I was gutted. And then the shopkeeper told me, "Well, you've only got another £100 to pay." And I said, "How do you mean?" He says, "Well, you've hired it for 12 months, and
Yeah.
that money comes off the cost of the instrument." So
Wow.
so I spoke to my mom, and my mom says, "Yeah, yeah." And I'm sure it was either a partner or whatever it was.
Yeah, your
The money
partner.
that
Yeah.
the partner money came in and
Yeah.
paid for the rest, and the
That's
rest is history.
that's excellent. That's excellent. So did you then obviously continued your profession as as an engineer, electronic engineer, and a musician?
Yes. So how it was, electronics was first, um, music was second, and computers was my hobby. And
Uh,
then what happened was because I became an electronic bench engineer, I used to work for a computer company called Apricot back in the day.
okay.
And I used to fix the computers and I used to build and design the test rigs um, back then. And I mean, you go to stores now and you can see where you can have about 20 screens running off one
Yeah.
video signal. Well, when I was working for Apricot, I actually designed the box that would a line driver, we called it back then, which would
Yeah.
take one video signal and power, up to 20 screens.
Right. Right. Right.
So and obviously back then used to repair things back to component level. So
Mm.
I was quite, I enjoyed it. I was
Yeah.
gutted when what they call modular repairs came in, where you didn't have to repair something down to component level anymore. It was if the board, you got the power supply,
Yeah.
you've got the main board, and let's say the neck board that sits on the screen.
Yeah.
And it was, if it was the power supply, you took the power supply out and put a new one in. So you
Yeah.
didn't have to repair to
I
component level
understand.
anymore.
Understand. I fully understand what you're saying because a lot of skills that people had in terms of what you're saying, making
Mm.
things and building it, and all this. It's one in, one out, isn't it? One component in
Yeah.
and another one out. So that
Yeah.
skill went.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did, and I was gutted with that. So I had to then change. So where electronics was first,
Mm,
music was second, and
mm,
computers at the bottom. It switched. So music went at the bottom. Computers sort of came more to the top, and electronics became second. And then I
mm.
changed careers and went back and studied and became a computer person. In fact, an IT consultant sort of thing.
Wow.
And then I
Wow.
switched, and then
Yes.
music was right at the bottom. It was always there, but it was always at the bottom.
Yeah. Did you actually become a part of a group or something in the music world?
I did. I used to play quite often at my local church. I played regular at my local
Yes.
church, and we had back then a very popular known artist called David Copeland. I played a lot for him and various choirs and did some studio sessions and things like
Mm,
that.
mm.
And but it was very much on the back burner. Then when the children came along, got married and had kids, it went even further back then.
Right. Right.
Um, I
Right.
I didn't practice or anything like that. I just played it every now and again
Yeah.
while the kids were growing up. But I played for bands. I played I played for a chap called Wayne Blake who used to have a band back then, and I
Mm,
played in a band called Rapture, and then I played in a band called La Gyra Praise with Bernard Taylor.
yeah. Wow.
But this is like as my kids were getting a bit old and a little bit more independent, sort of thing.
Yeah. 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 Well, you sound as if you had a very, very sort of engaging life with all the different things, computing and music
I'd have to say yes, I did. But the challenge was there. I had to overcome those stereotypical images of what was expected of you, but what you really could do, sort of thing. People saw you a certain way, but you knew you was much more than that.
right. So if I'm thinking right, people see you in a certain way because of the color of your skin.
Yes,
Yes, that I fully understand because it's a preconception, isn't it? Pre-thinking that
yes,
you can only do so much. I think
yes,
what you're saying, but just by looking at you without
yes,
knowing you.
yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And working life, I mean, that was electronics. In my working life, I mean, I look back at it now and I could definitely identify racial bias. At the time when I was going through it, I didn't see it. I didn't understand
Okay.
it. I
Yeah,
saw it as it's that person or it's just that company,
right.
and that's how I saw it. And
Yes.
I didn't see it as a global thing. I think
Mm,
years later I realized, then a penny dropped that it's
mm,
more than just that person and that company. It
yeah.
is actually a global thing.
Yeah, and life experience teaches you a lot of things, doesn't it?
Yes,
And that's why it's so important to have school, the curriculum reflect the right things what we teach people.
yes,
um, Very, very, very important. You've lived a very, very full life, but then something happened to you where unfortunately you became ill.
yes.
Do you want to tell us something about that?
Yes, I can. Yeah, I can give you a back. Do you want me to give you a backdrop of where
Yeah, yeah,
things?
yeah. I mean, because from now you're telling the viewers that you had a full life, going on doing your thing, and all of a sudden you were ill. So how did that come about?
Well, I had too many things going on.
Ah,
Too many things going on. I was self-employed as an IT consultant. I was also part of a group of business people, and we owned a property that we we had in this property, we'd leased out sections of it, and the credit crunch occurred,
Okay.
and it put that business in a lot of trouble. Um, I was self-employed, and I decided to come out of self-employment because my kids were growing up, and my wife needed the time. She needed me to spend more time with the children so that she could complete her university studies.
Okay.
And being self-employed, some of the work where I was doing, I was going too far afield, and I wasn't going to be at home much. And up until that point, I used to take my kids to school and do some of the chores. And I decided to come out of self-employment. So, you got to wrap up the business and things like that.
Hmm.
And that was quite stressful. Um, the other business that I was involved with, that was very, very stressful. Um, I was a busy father, taking my kids to football, netball, um, dance, you
Yeah.
name it, swimming.
Yeah.
I was very, very busy. I was a taxi.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you
Uh,
got 4 kids, quite a commitment with
yeah,
four
yeah,
kids.
yeah. So I was busy that way. Church-wise, I was very, very busy too.
Wow.
And then I was playing for a band, and that was
Wow.
busy, and I had all that going on. And what happened was, I didn't see it, but my right side started to shut down.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't lift my right leg properly, and playing in the band, the things that I used to play, I started to find that I couldn't play it with my right hand. It was getting slow, so I thought it was because of lack of practice,
Mm.
and my body started to shut down, and I didn't see it, and I had all the excuses in the world you could think of. When I couldn't lift my leg, I put it down to the fact the shoes didn't fit me properly, so I bought boots
Mm.
and it wasn't dragging as much. So I thought, yeah, that solved that problem. And then I realized I couldn't lift my right shoulder. I could lift my left, but I couldn't lift my right shoulder. It was just did not respond. And bit by bit, my right side was shutting down. And I think my wife noticed it when we were on holiday. I
Okay.
couldn't see it. And my response to questions and answers was like she'd ask me a question and I'd respond about 2, 3 minutes later.
Is that right?
Yeah, everything had slowed down, and I kept breaking the speed limit and getting flashed by speed cameras. And I got frustrated because I thought that I was driving the speed limit, but my responses were so slow that I didn't realize. And
That's amazing.
I broke through red lights and didn't realize, and things like that. All kinds of things was going on.
Goodness. So really, that was quite dangerous then.
It was, but I couldn't see it. I could not see it. And it was only when I had a stroke um, that I had to come to terms with the fact that something wasn't right with me.
Right.
And
Wait, so you say when you had a stroke, because it sounds as if you're having like miniature strokes on the way up. Because if you one side of you is not working, isn't that sort of a? I mean, I don't know the medical world so well, but it sounds as if you had a sort of a miniature build up to a
there
big.
was, but I couldn't see it. I remember actually my visual memory also was affected.
Wow.
Um, because I could see someone and think, let's just say there's Dave and Charlie, and I could see someone that looks like Charlie, and I think it's Charlie. And so I go to Charlie and says, "How you doing, Charlie?" And then as soon as he started to speak, the voice did not match the face, and then all of a sudden the face would change before me, and I suddenly realized he looked like Charlie, but he doesn't look like Charlie anymore.
Oh my God! How long
And
did that last for?
um, it lasted for during the time while I had the tumor and didn't know. I
Also, you
even
had a tumor.
I had a brain tumor and didn't know.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I didn't know. I even crashed in. Can you imagine? I'm an employee. I've got my manager, and then I've got my senior manager in a meeting with a client. And I walk past the office, and this person looked like my ex-boss from another company, and I got excited. And I thought, what's he doing here? So I popped my head round the door and I said, "Excuse me, but that's my ex-boss." And his name was Steve. And I said, "Steve, do you remember me? Are you okay?" And then he started to speak and he says, I'm not Steve, my name's Dave. And his voice didn't recognize his voice. And all of a sudden his face changed.
Oh
And I
my
thought,
goodness.
sorry, I mistook you for somebody else. And I just came out the room and ran down the corridor. And I think, what was all that? And nobody spoke about it.
Oh my God.
Nobody spoke about it. And it was only when must have been a good 4 or 5 years later when my senior boss was leaving, I mentioned it. And she says, yes, that was very strange times. But then obviously from there, when they found out I had a brain tumor, I think they put
Yes.
the pieces together.
Oh my God. So how did you actually find out that you had a tumor?
I had a stroke
Oh,
and I had a stroke and my right side went. And I tell this story quite often because it was at that moment that I realized that I am not my body. I'm someone who resides in this body because I watched the whole of my body just my hand curl up into a stroke position and my eyes were rolling, my face had dropped, and I had lost control of the whole of my right side. But I could see and I could hear, but I couldn't control my body.
wow.
And when my wife realized what had happened to me, she panicked, jumped off the bed, and she phoned the paramedics. And I could hear her and see her when my eyes wasn't rolling. And I'm saying to her, I felt within myself, I felt fine, even though my body was all um, sort of twisted in the bed. And I'm trying to speak and say to her, Brenda, stop panicking, I'm fine. But no speech was coming out. It was just grunts and groans.
Wow.
I couldn't even speak, but I was speaking, but nothing
It
cohesive.
it wasn't audible.
No, it was just grunts and groans. And it was like I was like looking out through the eyes of looking out through the window of my eyes, seeing and
Yeah,
hearing, but I had no control over my body. It's like I'm looking and my body's can't do anything.
that's amazing.
And it was at that point I realized that I'm not my body. I just reside in it. And then a voice from somewhere just came to me and said, "You can heal yourself. I've heard a preacher preach you can heal yourself." And that voice came to me. And I thought, okay. My wife by this time was talking to the paramedics, and then she had to put me in the recovery position, was to lie me on my left side.
Yes.
And I thought, I don't want to lie on my left side. So
Also, she was talking on the phone to the paramedics.
yeah, at this point,
Okay.
and they told her to put me in the recovery position because my obviously I'm in the stroke on the bed, and she put me in the recovery position, and I thought I don't want to be in the recovery position. I don't want to lie on my left side. So
Yeah.
somehow I managed to riddle over and turn on my right side.
Oh my goodness.
And that voice came to me at that point and says, "You can heal yourself." So I thought, okay, I've had enough of this sickness now. And that's what I said in my head. I says, I'm going to get rid of it. So I said, in the name of Jesus, I command this sickness to leave my body now. And when I said that, everything went silent.
So did you think you said that audibly out loud?
I said it audibly, but it wasn't a language that came out. It was just grunts and groans. But I knew what I said.
Okay. Okay.
It was just grunts
Okay.
and groans. And
At that time, I can imagine your wife must have been beside herself in terms of,
she was, she
my
was
goodness, wow. Did you,
totally.
so before we go any further, have you gone through this with her and spoken to her and said how she felt at the time, what she thought was going on?
Bit by bit, she reveals a little bit more because I think it was very, very traumatic for her, and I think
Yeah.
it's one of those things that she doesn't often talk about because you see, her dad, what she saw me go through, she witnessed that with her dad when she was
No,
with a teenager.
really?
Yeah, because her dad suffered a massive stroke and he didn't really fully recover.
That is. that is quite an amazing thing for, because very often people don't actually experience anybody going through a stroke, but to experience it with a dad and yourself.
Yeah. So it was very traumatic for her.
Yeah.
And the things that I can remember is very sketchy. She's got more of the detail, and sometimes I'll speak to her to get the detail from her perspective.
Yeah. That's amazing. So what happened next?
Well, after I rebuked the sickness, it just went silent. And then all of a sudden, my face straightened up, my eyes stopped rolling, my mouth stopped dribbling, and my body stopped convulsing, and it just went quiet. And I remember when I initially had the stroke, my jaw, it didn't come down straight like that. It came down at an angle, and then it came across like that and sheared off one of my teeth.
No.
Yeah, and all of that stopped, and my face straightened up, and I could not feel my arm at all. I just felt a stump here. I could just feel my shoulder. That was it. Couldn't feel anything lower than my shoulder. It's as though I didn't have an arm. It's as though my arm was cut off here. It
Yeah.
was just totally dead. And then bit by bit, it's almost like somebody switched on the power and the light switch, and then I could feel all this tingling and like power surges all going down my arm,
Yes.
and then it started to come back to life. But it felt like it 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 felt like I was picking up a ton. It was
Yeah.
that heavy.
And
It,
how long a time was that then? All of
for
this
me,
happening.
at the time, it felt like 5 minutes for me.
Mm.
But I think in total it must have been at least half an hour.
And did the medics turn up within that time?
Yeah, all I remember as I was recovering was hearing a voice to the left of me saying, calling my name. And I responded and said, yes, I'm okay. But when I started to speak, I was speaking with a lisp. My speech hadn't fully come back.
Uh,
Um, and he says, the paramedic guy says, can you get dressed? And I says, yes, sure. And I'm going on as though nothing's happened. And I could barely use my arm. And my wife, she helped me to get dressed. And I actually got off the bed and walked off the bed and downstairs into the hallway. My brothers and sisters was there saying, "Gosh, Herb, you gave us a fright. We heard you had a stroke," which I did. But when I rebuked the sickness, it left me.
Isn't that amazing?
It was amazing. I look back at it now, and I'm glad I wrote it down because sometimes you look at these things and it's like, did that really happen?
Mm.
Sort of thing.
Also, you'd written something down shortly after that, had you?
I didn't write it at that time.
No, obviously, but
It wasn't long after I started writing, but I generally keep a journal anyway.
okay,
I
okay,
used to
okay,
keep a journal, but my
right.
journal was more, um, as and when something had occurred or something
Mm,
happened and I
mm,
wanted to be able to reflect on it, I'd write it down. Or if I had a
mm.
vision or a dream, I'd write it down. So
Yeah,
I'd keep a journal in
yeah.
general, but it wasn't a regular thing. But after this experience, it became more a regular thing.
So they were having a stroke and then thought you were all right again. Obviously, you weren't, and they knew you weren't. So they took you to the hospital, I suppose.
Yes, they did.
And how did they sort of come up with this thing? The magic, of finding out,
Well,
because
well,
obviously
well, put it
these
this way.
people.
I went there at about 1:45 in the afternoon, and it was like about 12 hours later, after midnight, before they come to the conclusion that I had a brain tumor. Um,
Wow.
I was there for practically 12 hours. And I'm just cutting it short because
Yes.
I missed a crucial bit where during the time when I was kind of like not accepting the fact that something was wrong, I wrote off my brother's car.
What
Um,
you went for a drive?
I was before that, leading up to me having the
Oh, I see.
stroke,
Yes, yes, yes,
I
yes,
was still driving and doing normal things.
yes.
And I remember driving my brother's car, and it's people carrier and it's wide wheels, so you can't turn that car over or skid that much because it's
Yes,
it
yes,
it
yes,
sits on the
yes,
road. And I was going across this roundabout and it had something on there and I was going quite fast, not realizing I was going quite fast.
yes.
And then I lost control. And under normal circumstances, I would have been able to gain control.
Mm,
But because my responses were slow, I
mm.
literally wrapped the car around the lamppost
No.
and I couldn't get out the driver's door because the
Yeah.
driver's door was all pushed in where I crashed into a lamppost. So I had to crawl out the car at the passenger side, and I crawled out, and people who were driving on the opposite side of the road, they were in amazement. They looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine." And I came out of the car thinking, "Don't know what happened there. Something on the roundabout." And I started taking pictures of the car, and the police came and they would not allow me to drive home, but I convinced them to drive home, with the car
In the same car.
in the same car, in the same car, and it had a massive dent in the one side. And the policeman said, "I have to put some police tape on this car because if another policeman sees you with the car like that, they will stop you again." So he put the police tape on, and I drove the car home and parked it up on my drive.
Oh my God.
And obviously, need to say I wrote it off.
But you were very fortunate.
I was very fortunate. I wrote that car off, and I didn't realize it was because my responses were slow. Later on, I did, and
Oh,
then my peripheral vision was going,
yes.
and my other brother's car, I reversed into a lamppost and completely took his wing mirror off because I didn't see the lamppost. They said they could see it, but I didn't see it. So all these things were happening.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the physical effect that it had on you, all these different
Mm.
things, slow,
It was very,
react.
very slow, very, very slow.
Oh my goodness. And then, you said it took him 12 hours to come up with the fact that you had a brain tumor at
Tumor,
the
yeah,
hospital.
yeah. And
How did you feel when they told you that?
it went straight over my head. I couldn't receive that information. It didn't mean anything to me. The only thing that I could think of was if I've got a brain tumor, they're going to have to cut into my head to remove it. And I couldn't even think about that because to me, it's like it's touch and go. I could die. Somebody's
Yeah,
actually going to cut into my head.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, it just went straight over my head. I couldn't even think about it. If I'd have thought about it or tried to even understand it, I think I would have gone to pieces.
Wow. And I've read your book, Hello to Self,
So, yes.
Irvin Meet Kalja. Is it Kalja? Am I pronouncing that right?
It's written Kalja, but it's pronounced Kala.
Kala.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
And then,
Kalya.
and how did you come up with that name? Because the graphic details of what happens at the hospital, etc., etc., etc. How did you come up with that name?
Well, let's just say God wanted to get my attention because in the book there's a lots of spiritual experiences as well as
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
some spiritual experiences. A lot of them I didn't put in that book. In fact, the book was much bigger than that, but I had to split the book in two. The rest
Okay.
of them are in another book. But while I was in hospital, the Lord told me what my name was, and He
Oh,
said that's what it was. And at the time, He told me that my name was Kala, and I'd had other spiritual experiences while I was there in the hospital. And if you can imagine, the dialogue between me and the Lord is He's showing me stuff that I can't logically understand.
yeah.
So I'm just saying that's a lot of rubbish, Lord. I don't believe that. And I'm saying that's a lot of rubbish because you can't hide who you really are in His presence.
Right.
Um, I can be talking to you now and thinking three or four different things, and you only see what I speak to you.
Yes,
What the
yes, yes,
Lord
yes,
sees,
yes.
He
Yeah.
sees those three or four different things clear as day. He sees
Uh,
them. He sees who you really are. So I couldn't hide my responses or how I felt about whatever I saw,
mm.
or whatever the Lord told me, and I didn't believe it. I couldn't hide it. So
So this must have been an emergency thing once they found out your state of play in terms of having a tumor. Was that then straight into the operation?
they said I was going straight in, but I didn't.
Oh,
Um, on the 18th of December 2010 is when I had, at 1:15, is when I had the stroke.
uh,
On the 19th at 1 o'clock in the morning, they diagnosed me with a brain tumor. And it was on the 31st, New Year's Eve, that I had the tumor removed.
oh,
Because what happened was my consultant, they kept saying he's going to come to see you, but never did, and that sort of thing. And during that time, I met a lot of people who similar to me. I even met Prince Charles and David Cameron.
oh, right. Yes, I remember reading that in your book. Yeah.
Yeah, they came in to see a soldier who was injured from Afghanistan. A sniper bullet in the station post where he was must have come through a little window, and it ricocheted off the back wall and went up the back of his helmet and took out a big chunk of his head.
Oh, my goodness.
And he was in the bed opposite me, and he was in the regiment that at the time Prince Charles was in charge of.
Okay. Yes.
Now he's now obviously King Charles.
Yeah.
And while we were there was four of us obviously in the bay. We were just told that royalty was coming. I thought it was the chief exec of the
Yeah.
QE,
Yeah. Yeah.
the QE hospital. And then all of a sudden, the floors was mopped. All the dispensers was half-used dispensers was taken out and full ones was put in. All the nurses and carers that were in the bay had to have fresh, clean, new um, outfits put on. And some of his soldier friends came and they were in, they were well dressed. And then all of a sudden, it was like Men in Black, like the
Mm.
movie.
Yeah.
These four, or you could hear talking coming down the corridor, and then you saw these like four men come in and stood in strategic places in the
Yeah.
bay, in the like black suits sort of thing. And then in walks David Cameron and Prince Charles. Obviously, David Cameron was the then Prime Minister,
Yes.
and King Charles was then Prince Charles. And I
Yeah.
was in amazement, and I was just in total amazement that they actually came, and they only spoke to two people, me and the soldier that came to see,
Uh,
and told me to get well soon. And I
yeah.
thought, I thought, wow, Lord, this is amazing. I mean, you get the two leaders of the country to tell me to get well soon, sort of thing.
Not everybody get that, right?
No, no.
That's
So that was
fantastic.
another unique moment for me.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And there were plenty of moments because I did you note these moments down in your journal because your recollection was just fantastic in the book.
Yes, I did. I wrote everything down. Up until having a brain tumor, my memory was sharp.
Okay.
My memory was sharp. I remembered a lot of things, but because of a brain tumor, I
Yeah.
didn't know how much I was, how much things I'd done, and I would remember, and if I'd
Mm,
actually done something and forgotten.
mm,
It's like a catch-22. It's like, did I re did I actually do that? Because I can't remember doing it,
mm.
and because I can't remember doing it, it means I haven't done it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I did do it, but I can't remember doing it, and you end up in a tailspin and not knowing whether you did or you didn't
Yeah.
because your memory is gone.
Yeah.
So, and for my own sanity, I had to write things down.
I don't suppose everybody did things like you. I mean, it was obviously quite astute or conscious that you had to write things down. Because I can imagine a lot of people being in your situation wouldn't be bothered to write things down. They'd be just worried about getting better.
Yeah, I had to write things down because, and especially when it was fresh in my mind,
Yeah.
because I met so many people who had very interesting stories while I
Mm,
was there in the hospital. I
mm.
met some doctors and nurses, some who were nice and some who were not so nice.
It's life. Yeah.
Yeah, and I I wanted to document those nurses who looked after me and those who didn't. You
Okay.
know,
But
I
yeah.
wanted to remember who did and who didn't,
Well, that's fair. Yes,
sort
that's
of thing.
amazing.
So
Amazing.
I had all that written down in my journal, and I didn't want to forget the names of the people who were good,
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
thing, and the
How
people
long
that
did you
I'd met.
spend in how long did you spend in the hospital then?
I spent in the December, I spent 3 weeks, and it should have been 6, but they'd brought out a new policy where 10 days, I think, was the maximum, and then you have to come out
After having a brain tumor
to
operation.
in general. In general, that was the new policy.
Wow.
So I was meant to have been in there for 6 weeks, and I was in for 3. And because I recovered so well and very, very quickly,
Okay.
they rushed me out. Not only
How
did
did
they
you
ru
feel within yourself? How did you feel within yourself? Did you feel
I was
ready to come
still
out?
I, I was kind of like ready to come out. I was kind of, in one sense I was, and in one sense I wasn't.
Mm.
I didn't accept the fact that I was ill. If anybody asked me if I was okay, I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm brilliant. Are you feeling any pain? No pain. Can you use your arm? Yeah, I can use my arm."
Wow.
I was still didn't accept the fact that I was ill, and because I recovered so well, they wanted to rush me out, which they did,
Mm.
and I just wanted to let everybody know that I was better,
But
and
were you though?
I wasn't, but I didn't accept it.
So what happened next?
when they rushed me when they rushed me out and I was at home, obviously I suddenly realized that I couldn't cope with things that I did before. I love to do DIY,
Mm.
and there was a blind that was broken in my daughter's bedroom. I thought, great, I'll go and fix that blind, and I started climbing up the ladders, and my legs was that weak, I was wobbling. I couldn't climb the ladders, and then on top of that, um, I was trying to hold the screw in my right hand and use the drill in my left. And my right hand, I didn't have good control over it. My cognitive motor skills was still poor.
Yeah.
So it's like there's the hole, and it's like I'm putting the screw in the hole, but I can't find it. It's like my left a bit,
Yeah.
right a bit, up a bit,
Yeah.
down a bit, and
Yeah.
then as
Yeah.
I'm about to put it in, it's slipped away. I
Yeah.
couldn't control. So it's almost like I've got the drill in this hand, and I'm using this hand to try and steady
Yes.
this
Yes.
hand,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and I
Yes.
couldn't do it,
Mm.
and I couldn't do the general things that I wanted to do. And then I had very, very bad brain fatigue. So all of a
Okay.
sudden, I just needed to go and rest. And then I was out for 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden, all the stroke-like symptoms came back. My right
Okay.
arm wouldn't stop
Really?
shaking. Yeah, it wouldn't
That
stop
must have
shaking.
been really worrying time for your wife then,
It
experiencing that sort of.
was, it was. I was still telling myself I was getting sharp pains in my head,
Yeah.
and where they, because I had a tube coming out my head where they were draining all the fluid from my head, and that was
Even
there.
when you were at home or just while you were in the
No,
hospital?
no, they'd taken it out by then.
Oh, so
But
you're right.
where
Okay.
that tube was, I was
Yes.
getting a lot of pain
Oh,
and
right. Okay.
sharp pains.
Yeah.
And I was saying to myself, oh, it's healing pains.
Mm.
I was saying it was healing pains. And then when my right arm, I couldn't control my right arm and it started shaking like somebody with MS,
Yeah.
I thought, I better get it checked out. And when I had it checked out, my doctor came and, cut a long story short, found out that I had a brain infection,
Oh my
and
goodness.
it was spread all over my brain, and my system would have just slowly shut down.
Wow.
So I ended up, after 2 weeks at home, I ended up back in hospital, and I was in there for another 3 weeks, and I was
Did
meant to
did
have been in 6 weeks.
did they have to operate again, or did they?
Yes, they did. They
Really?
did. Yeah. Within, literally within 3 weeks of having a hole cut in my head and a bone flap being removed, um, they had to come back and take that same bone out again,
Wow.
and then had to go back in, and this time they had to clean up, cut through my some nerve endings,
Wow.
to get to clean up
The infection.
the infection, and that was worse than the tumor. When I
Wow.
came out of that operation, my right arm was totally paralyzed.
Really?
I couldn't use it at all, totally paralyzed. And they couldn't put the bone back. So I had a hole in my head. So that was a very, very low period for me. But
I would imagine so. Oh my goodness.
I had to bounce back though.
Yeah.
I had to bounce back. Um,
So I mean, what you're describing there very graphically and eloquently, I mean, is just unbelievable. Because
mm,
looking at you now, it's like you're telling a story, a fictional story, if you know what I mean.
yeah,
Because you seem so well now, and for you to come back from that,
yeah. Well, that's why I was called the Miracle Man. And that's why I had to write the story, because what I also realized is that body, soul, and spirit, those different parts of me healed at different times.
um,
And when I had a vision. I think that's in book one. I had a vision that many people were praying for me,
yes,
and it was prayers coming from everywhere,
yeah,
and it was like millions of prayers, which I personally experienced. I was like floating on a sea of prayers, and then I felt the presence of the Lord come to the left of me, and in a nutshell, said that it's already done, that I'm healed, and I received that in my spirit at that moment in time, and I was on cloud nine. It's like the Lord actually came to me and told me that I was healed, and I was running around. Well, I'm not literally running around, but I was
mm,
going around in the hospital, and I was the happiest person there because of that experience. And even though I couldn't walk properly and I
yeah,
couldn't hold anything properly with my right hand, I'd received it in my spirit that I was healed, but my body was still broken.
wow,
My
fantastic.
body was still broken. So instantaneously, I received it in my spirit that I was healed, but it took 7 years for my body to recover from it.
7 years.
Yes, took
So so
7 years.
that's the physical side of
The physical
your,
side,
yeah. So
yeah,
how
and
are you mentally?
mentally, it was a constant to-ing and fro-ing, because if I contrast it with a friend of mine who was a bit older than me, but the two of us we were in intensive care at the same time, and he recovered quicker than me, and he came out a day before I did, and we were on the same ward together, and we were like, it was almost like we were quickly recovering, and all of a sudden, I had my catheter taken out, he wanted his taken out, but then we had a like a kind of like a heart to heart talk, and he said to me, he says, "Well, what happens next?" And he said, I says, "Well, you'll be able to take it easy and slow down and enjoy your life now." And he says, "But I was doing that before. I'd retired and I was doing that before, and this has happened." And he mentally couldn't cope with what has just happened to him, and he went down.
Oh,
And all of a sudden, I was excelling, getting better, and he had a relapse. He had
oh,
a relapse. And then I never forget it. When they were taking the tube out of my head, um, this guy, he was going through a relapse. Subconsciously, he sat up in bed and just fell over and banged his head on the cabinet at the side. And
no.
yeah, and the doctors who was taking the tube out of my head, they had to stop dealing with me. They pulled the cord out the wall, and the alarm went off, and all the doctors and nurses went to see to him. And he had a relapse because he couldn't cope mentally with what just happened to him. He went down,
Yes, yes.
and he had to have his catheter put back in, and then he had to go back into high dependency ward. And I just continued to get better and better.
That's
And
yeah.
I found that the mental side was, did that really happen to me? Yes, it did. Because you've got the scars for it.
Mhm.
Was it a dream? No, it wasn't. It was real. And will it come back again? No, it won't. It won't come back because the Lord said you were healed. And I had to deal with those backwards and forwards in my
And
emotional state.
I would imagine that, that's not just a short thing, isn't it? It must have
No,
gone on for
that
quite some
was a
time.
constant. That was a constant challenge. So I was healed physically 7 years later, fully recovered. I was healed instantly. I received that in my spirit, which was important because in your spirit is the will to live.
Yes.
And if you lose the will to live, you can just go like that.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in my emotional, mental, rational state, I was constantly dealing with thoughts and feelings that came. And if I dwelt on a thought, it behind that thought was a depression or an emotion
Yes.
that would be
Yes.
detrimental.
Yeah.
Um,
How are you now?
um, how am I now?
Yeah.
I let's just say this is how I deal with my emotional state. I speak absolutes and positives all the time now because positive thinking, if you speak positively, life and death is in the power of your tongue. If
Mm,
you speak positive things about yourself and to yourself, you
mm,
will receive the fruits of those things.
mm,
And equally, if you speak negatively, you'll receive the fruits of those things. So I
mm,
speak life over
mm,
myself.
mm,
I take more care of my physical being. I
mm,
exercise. I
mm.
make sure I listen to my body and I make sure I rest as much as I can.
Yes.
So I exercise. I've gone from not being able to run at all to I now run a 10K every Saturday morning.
Really?
Yeah, and I now do swimming.
That's fantastic.
I do swimming and I exercise regularly.
Yeah,
And me and my wife we go to the gym.
that's
And
great.
musically, I spend more time with my passion because when you're faced with a near-death experience, all the things that are important to you come to the surface to say, you haven't done this yet, you haven't
Yeah.
completed this, you haven't told such a one that you love them, you haven't
uh,
visited so and so, you know, all these
Yeah.
things come to the surface. So because of where I've been, I make sure that I value people
Yes, yes,
and I will
yes, yes.
tell them that I love them and I will visit. I don't put visits off if I can help it. Visit
Mm.
people and value them and show them that you care. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
put time
that's
into my,
great.
yeah, I put time into my music, and I do feel that I need to share my story. So I share it, and I use my music as a vehicle for that as well.
Wow. And that's why you've got this motto that life is a gift and a great opportunity to express love, care,
Yes,
and goodwill.
yes. I
Wow.
met so many people who, even though they were ill, they didn't really think much about themselves other than the fact that there's someone who they need to make peace with. There's someone they need to tell them that they love them. And, um, you know, and the other people who they need to pass things on to and things like that. And those were
Mm.
the things that were important for those people who were ill. And it was almost like as soon as if I get out of here, those are the things that I'm going to focus on.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
and it's not so much about you, it's about what impact that you have on others. That's important.
And that's, for you to realize that it's so important because you've got your immediate family,
Yes.
then you've got the extension of your family, then you've got
Yeah.
other people. You
Yes.
know, there's a massive impact there on all these people because people do care about you as an individual going
Yeah.
through all of that,
Yeah.
and
And
wondering how has he managed going through all of that, and, you know,
well, the irony is, before I actually had the stroke, I literally felt that I wasn't valued.
really,
I didn't feel valued. I just felt that because I because I could do a lot of things, I could fix things, and I could work things out. I was a solution to everybody else's problems, and they needed me for that. But
but you felt that you were taken for granted in a lot of sense then.
yeah, yeah, I did feel that. And at the time, my outlet was playing for the band at that time.
Wow.
But then, with my experience, it's like that's how I felt. And the Lord came and squashed that idea because I
Wow.
could not believe the amount of people who was interested in me, who even knew that I existed. was coming from everywhere. I was humbled, totally humbled by the experience.
That's fantastic. So going forward now, have you got any particular ambitions to do anything, or are you just taking life easier? What's future plans?
One side of me wants to take life easy and just chill and enjoy the fact that I can go for a walk, I can go for a run, I can see the beauty of the day.
Yeah.
I can, but then on another side of me, I feel that I need to be able to do something, not just for my children, but for my community.
Okay.
Um, and this goes back to me to like with the Windrush generation, because I believe that we're gifted, we're talented, we've got a lot of things to offer, and I think the next generation need to need to see that. Um, they need to see that, and they need to be inspired by us.
Fully,
So,
fully, fully, 100% agree and understand that statement.
so my book, writing books as an author is important to me.
Yeah.
The music is important to me, and passing on life skills is important.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't mentioned it, but in my career as an IT professional, as an electronic engineer, there's things that I've designed and built that in one company they shelved it um, because it wasn't supposed to come from a black person.
No.
Yeah, and when I designed and built it, I worked for a company, and um, they designed units that keep the smells down at landfill sites. And I designed a unit, designed and built it, built off a computer that would sit inside this unit. And if the chemical failed or the motor failed, it would write to a log file, the time and date of when it failed and what failed. And at back then, you could put a floppy disk in, press a button, and it would write the log file. You could take away and analyze the data. And I designed this unit that sat inside this chemical spraying um, thing. And I designed and built it. And my then boss, told me that it was too expensive to build. But the next engineer, he said to me, "I'm going to do one similar to yours, and but instead of using a floppy disk, I wanted to go via the airwaves through the telephone system." Back then, broadband and mobile phones were very, very expensive, and you couldn't use that
Mm,
technology cheaply.
yeah.
But he was going to do that. But guess what? He wanted me to teach him what I'd done
Oh
for
my
him to do
God.
it.
So, so,
For
so,
him
so
to
what
do
happened to your idea and what happened next?
it got shelved. It got shelved. They shelved it. Up till this day, they may have taken it off the shelf and done something with it, but I don't know. But that was one thing. And I'd forgotten about my engineering kind of background. And where I'm working now, we had a situation where a EPOS system was taken out, and it meant that when they took the EPOS system out, it logged in when anybody bought a ticket to go and visit the attraction. It took it also would
Sorry, can you
open.
explain what EPOS is for the purpose of?
EPOS is like a point of sale system. So you
Okay.
buy something, and
Mm,
obviously you get a ticket. Um, Say you bought a ticket to go and visit a particular an attraction.
yeah.
Yeah, this EPOS system, you would buy a ticket through this EPOS system. It's like your till, like you go to a
Yeah.
supermarket till, and you get a ticket. But this system, you get a ticket, and the ticket will open the gate or the door for you to go into this event.
Right. Right.
Well, where I worked, they took that system out, and they took the system out and they bought a new one, but this new system didn't have that mechanism to open the gate
Okay.
and so I actually used my electronics skills and designed electronic switch and wrote the program that when they bought, and my colleague wrote the program that would read the ticket, but I had to sort out the communications of that device
Wow.
so that when they put the ticket in front of the barcode reader would check that it's a valid ticket and trigger my switch to open the gate.
Wow. You
And
see,
I won't say where this place is, but it is a
yes.
very popular attraction, and it is my
Wow.
switch that controls the gate, and it's my software my program that opens that triggers
That
my switch to open the gate.
amazing. And I'm glad you're telling this because people watch this and you make the point about not being given the opportunity to get your product out there because of who you are,
Mm,
a Black person. Now, this is one of the reasons why we tell these stories because there are other guys and girls like yourself out there.
there are, but we
And
don't know.
yeah, and we've got the ability to do all these things and plenty more.
Yes, and those are the things that, because I'm seeing amongst even with my own children and youngsters, I know I still have skills that I could pass on that they could use to
Yes,
make a living.
yeah,
But it's how do you create those opportunities to
yes,
pass on those skills, and whether
and
they want to
yeah,
use those skills.
but also they've got to be able to see somebody like looks like them. Hence,
Yes,
these kind of recordings and interviews that
yes,
I've done these things. And once they see and hear you talk about your experience, they say, "Oh, so I can do that as well. This is what it's all about." This
mm,
is fantastic, really, to be this journey that you've been on. It's very unique in a lot of sense because it's your world, but the amount of things that's happened to you, it's like it's more
yes,
than one life you've lived.
mm, yes.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that's not even art. That's just a part of it.
Yeah, I can
Um,
imagine. I can well imagine.
it's a
Oh
part
my
of it.
goodness. So I want to say thank you for taking us on this journey because it is an amazing journey.
Yes.
The whole episode of going through life and feeling the way you did and not knowing why it was, and then having an operation like you did and recovering like you have done now.
Mm.
That is just fantastic. Um, have you got any questions at all about, you know,
The forgotten generations.
yeah.
Um, my question is, did they pass on their legacy? Should they pass on it? Well, they should. And you know, um, I'd I'd want more detail of why they came to the UK. And
So are you talking about people who have left their homelands
yes,
and settled? Um, yeah.
yeah, why they left. Some went back, and why didn't they go back? Because
Mm,
some only came for 5 years
mm,
and they didn't go back. And I've heard bits and pieces of the story, but I think it needs to be explored a lot more. More
yeah.
stories need to be told. Now, I've read your book and I really enjoyed reading your book.
Thank
And
you.
I felt that your book should be part of this English language curriculum.
Oh,
Um,
thank you
that's
very
what
much.
I felt
Thank
because
you.
it tells a story of a young black boy coming from the Caribbean to the UK and the challenges that you faced. And
Yeah.
a lot of I actually was born here, so I didn't have that contrast.
Right.
But
Right.
I can identify with some of the things that you said.
Mm, mm,
And
mm.
instead of learning about when I was at school, we were just learning about the American Civil War
Yes.
and
Yes. Yes. Yes.
slavery. We need to have some real stories and a different perspective of, you know, to get a better understanding of people from the Caribbean.
And that's why I started this organization called the Forgotten Generations. Because you mentioned my book, My Path of Life.
Yes,
Everybody's got a path of life, everyone. So I just say
yeah,
my path of life. And looking at what happened to me and my parents, I could see that there were a lot of different children experience the same thing.
mm,
And they went through good, bad, and indifferent. So did the parents. And like you
absolutely.
mentioned about a lot of parents wanted to come here for about 5 years or so. gather money for their family and go back. And it didn't work out that way. Very
Mm.
few went back, most stayed here. And their experiences are amazing as I interview them.
Mm.
And to hear somebody give your experience like you did, what you experienced being born here and going to the Caribbean, you know, a lot of people need to hear that because they've never experienced that sort of thing. But when I interview some of these parents, the stories are very telling. And we record these and put it out there so people can actually watch them, listen to them, and learn from them. And it's working, you know. And I want to do more of this. So, you know, anybody that's got a story to tell, the Forgotten Generation is there to help you to tell your story visibly, as we're doing now, and audibly as well. And we write articles about people's life stories as well, you know. So that's how it goes.
But yeah, we need more.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes.
we need more of this. Because after you get, I think with any people, if you don't know much about your background and your culture and who you are, when you get to a certain age, you do want to know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you're going to go to the sources. I mean, there's many times I've said that I would go and speak to senior members of my family or people that I know to get background information of how things were, and then they've passed on, and I never got the story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's why if you go onto our website, The Forgotten Generation, and look, you'll find several stories across the board. So it's not about one individual talking about that particular skill alone. We've got all different things from music to poetry to arts and photography, you know, honors and awards, right across. Because we as a people, that's who we are. And we're very talented. And the whole idea is to change, our ethos is to change the curriculum, the national curriculum, to reflect us as a people. And on a permanent basis in school, not just 1 month of the year. It should be a part of the school, just like every other ethnicity, really. There should be something to say who you are as a person and what your foreparents have done. So that's the ethos of the Forgotten Generations, you know.
And I think also, do you have any plans of staging events to, you know, just to?
The answer is yes, straight away. And there's a planned event, and I'm hoping it's going to happen, which is going to be an exhibition next year, looking at the military side of things, because it's a massive story there.
Yes.
And, you know, if all goes well, we'll have an exhibition in the Central Library in Birmingham looking at West Midlands Royal Air Force personnel, which is quite something. But this is very much linked to schools, university, museum. So they're all supporting this idea because, you know, that's a massive gap. There's a massive gap there. And that's just on the military side.
Yes.
But then once we get a template of that, we will then look at other stories to tell.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm thinking about it, I'm even thinking about the engineer or the black engineer in the UK.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. When I approached the Heritage Lottery, they said, find a template and make it work, and from there you can pan out, which is what we're doing. So thank you. That would be an area that we could look into as another avenue. So
and there's
endless, really.
It is. That's as an engineer, and then to me, you got those who are in the teaching field.
Yes, yes,
The
yes.
teachers, what they've experienced.
Yes, yes, because we're just about to add an education page as well to our website. So our website's got reflect most of what we do, and what's not there, we'll be working on them to put it on there so that it becomes an educational platform. We just tap into it, and whatever subject you want, there you go, have a look at it. And what's not there, you can recommend to us, you know, put that there. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Irvin,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
And thank you for
Very
listening.
much appreciate this, and all the best going forward.
Thank you. And yourselves. Well, I'll be checking out the website, and I probably will be putting some suggestions on there.
Absolutely, more than welcome. Thank you very much for that.
Okay.